Hello, and welcome to Cooking with Todd. This is Todd. For today's video, I will be doing a canning video, as you clearly can see by all the canning jars I have here. I have 24 jars, or 2 cases, and I will be making some Mexican pinto beans today, which, for this, you are going to need some salt. I have coarse grained sea salt here. You're going to need some minced onion, and I have that sitting in my bowl right there because that was at the end of the bottle and it'd be a little difficult to scoop out. You're also going to need some garlic powder, chili powder, and cayenne pepper. And you're going to need a small bowl of white vinegar to wipe the rims of your jars off after filling. You're also going to need a canning funnel, something to scoop your beans. You're also going to need a pitcher for water. That is a ½ gallon. You can use whatever size you want. You're also going to need these measuring spoon sizes. If you do not have a 3/4, you do not have to use it. You can just use a 1/2 and a 1/4 or just 3/4 with this one. You're also going to need a jar lifter. And, of course, you're going to need your bands. I am using the reusable lids, which these are Harvest Guard, and I have the reusable seals, which I have not prepared yet. I will show you how to prepare those if you're using this style of lid. You alternatively can use the regular middle flats. I have not been able to find those lately due to the COVID pandemic and all the stupid scalpers out there trying to charge $5 to $10 for 12 lids. I'm not going to do that. So, you're also going to need 5 pounds of beans. These have soaked for 10 to 12 hours, and they have doubled in size. The recipe I have calls for 4 1/4 pounds. I went with 5. Didn't feel like weighing out 1/4 pound. So, I might end up with a couple extra jars. That's why I have 24 instead of 20, like my canner can hold. You're also going to need a small pot for your rubber seals, since I'm using the Harvest Guard. If you're using your regular steel flats, you do not need to do this step, but I am. You're also going to need, of course, your canner, and I got my recipe hanging right there. To get started, I'm going to go ahead and put you up in my camera mount, and I will be right back. Okay, so I have my camera back up on the mount, and I'm going to start by putting some water in my small pot to get my rubber seals prepared. And I'm going to turn that on to bring it up to a simmer while I'm getting my jars prepared. And I'm going to start by adding my seasonings to my jars first. And for that, I'm going to use 2 teaspoons of this minced onion per jar. And you don't really have to level them off. And I'm going to leave the last 4 jars empty. I'm not going to use those because my canner can only fit up to 20 jars depending on how I orientate my jars. So I am not going to add anything to those right now. I might have another batch of something I might be doing, so I'm also going to go ahead and add in 1 teaspoon of garlic powder to each jar. Now, I normally just put my beans in and then put the seasonings on top of the beans. I don't know why I'm doing it this way today, but there's that. I'm also going to add in 1 teaspoon of chili powder. And my water is getting ready to come up to a boil. So I am going to go ahead and cut the heat. Since I have an electric stove, the heat's going to stay there for a little bit. Some people might be freaking out that I'm tapping a middle measuring spoon on my jars. I am not really too worried about that. I'm not really tapping it hard at all. It's just a very light tap, literally just the weight of the spoon itself. So I'm going to go ahead and count out 24 of my seals just in case. So bear with me for a second. And I'm going to just drop those into the now not even simmering water. And I'm going to take the back end of my measuring spoon and just move them around a little bit. I don't know why, just because I want to. And I forgot to bring out my ground cumin, so I'm going to go get that right quick. Okay, so you're also going to need 1 teaspoon of ground cumin. And you're going to want to put 1 teaspoon of this per jar too. Okay, so that's done. Now I'm going to go ahead and add in my 1/4 teaspoon of cayenne pepper. Also, if you'd want to, you can add in some smoked paprika. I'm pretty sure that's going to be good. That would be really good in this. So one of the good things about canning everything yourself at home is you can experiment, and if you like it, make a note on your recipe that you changed it, and you can keep doing it that way from now on. Just like I'm going to experiment with 2 of these jars today with something a little different, and I will show you what that is right about now. And for the last 2 jars, I am going to try 1 teaspoon of this, which is literally, it's just Frank's Red Hot hot sauce in powder form, and I love Frank's Red Hot, so I am giving this a try, and if I like it, then I know that I can make a note on my recipe that I can substitute the cayenne pepper for some of this. And now I'm going to go ahead and just remove these 4 jars off of here right quick. Set those off to the side, and I'm going to go ahead and remove these off of here. And I'm going to get a pot holder, and I'm going to set these off to the side next to my canning supplies. And I'm going to go ahead and get ready to start putting the beans in. But to start that, I'm going to go ahead and bring my pressure canner over to the burner that I'm going to use, which is a specially made canning burner for electric ranges. It's, I believe, 500 extra watts than your normal big burner, and it's also taller. It allows you to pretty much clear the side of your stove a little more for your canner. And you're going to want to start off by putting one of your canning racks in the bottom of your canner. And I like to use a half a gallon of water in the bottom of my canner for each run. Doesn't matter what the processing time is. Occasionally I'll put 3 quarts in. Since I am pretty much maxing out today's session with a 90-minute runtime, I am going with 3 quarts because I do not want my canner to run dry. That is not good. I'm going to go ahead and get these measuring spoons put off to the side. And I am going to start measuring in my beans. I like to use about 1 cup of beans per jar. And I like to level them out and look at the side, and I typically like it to be right about here. So the dash right after your 8-ounce mark is where I like to keep my jars. It gives it just enough liquid, but it's not thick. It is thick, but it's not. don't really how to explain it. I'll bring out a jar that's finished that I canned about a year, I'm going to say a year ago. And I'm doing this today because I am almost out of my beans from a year ago. And what I'm going to do for these jars that I used the Frank's Red Hot is I'm going to make a special mark on the bottom of it probably, or like on the lid. I'll probably take like a Sharpie and just put a little mark on it so I can identify those are the ones that are different from the main recipe. And I'm kind of hoping to get about a batch and a half of these today, because I also have another recipe I'm going to be doing. So today is going to be a fun-filled canning day for me. And I also should go ahead and mention that since I am not hot packing, my canner is going to remain on the burner right now, but it's not going to be turned on. Since I'm cold packing, I do not want to thermal shock my jars by putting them in a hot canner with cold liquids in them. That will thermally shock them. I just started canning about this time last year. The whole COVID pandemic kind of kick-started me and got me into wanting to start putting away. Should go ahead and just mention, you are going to want to sort through your beans and take any of the bad ones out. Those will normally float to the top when you stir them. So I stirred these before I strained the water off of them. And that is my last jar. I do have quite a bit left, so I'm going to slide this off to the side and bring my other 4 jars out and see if I can fill those up or not. And these will just be canned as straight Pintos. Alright, so I still have probably about 2 jars left, so that's going to be about half of a canner. So I'm going to put these back off to the side right quick. Okay, and I got me a half gallon of water here, and I am going to go ahead and start filling my jars here with water. I'm not going to use the canning funnel, as that just gets in my way when I'm filling my jars up with liquid. These 2 here are my Frank's Red Hot beans, and I'm going to fill this up to 1 inch of headspace, which that's a little more, but actually that was kind of spot on. Go ahead and fill this one up. And where you're wanting to fill these, 1 inch of headspace is right about here. So the lip, or right around here, underneath all the threads, that is your 1 inch of headspace. And you don't really have to fill it right up to that line at this time, because you're going to want to debubble your jars, which I will have to go get a wooden skewer for that. I did not get one of those out. Okay, so that is done. I did forget to add my salt in, which is fine. I caught it before I started getting everything in the canner. So I'm going to do 3/4 of a teaspoon per jar of salt. Okay, so I got the salt done. I'm going to go ahead and set that back off to the side. And now I'm going to go ahead and grab a wooden skewer. And I am going to go ahead and just go around the sides and kind of just mix the beans up a little bit. And I'm going to go ahead and top any of the jars off that has fell below the 1 inch of headspace. This is why you want to debubble. Alright, so these jars look fine. What I am going to do is I'm going to go ahead and show you how to use the reusable lids. I'm going to grab them out of the water. And how you're going to do this is you take one of your lids, you put the seal on, then you take a jar and you try and hold on to the seal and the lid and you put it on. Now the instructions that came with these say to just barely, just pretty much go like that, but just a little tighter. Now I find that doesn't really work, so it works, but the band falls off way too easy, so I like to tighten it down a little bit, just like you would a regular flat, but then I back it off about that much, and that works for me just fine. Oh, actually just remembered I forgot to wipe my rims down with my vinegar, so I'm going to have to redo that one jar and rinse that seal off. But I'm just going to dip a paper towel in some vinegar, just run along the rims. And this is just cleaning anything that may have splashed onto the rim or anything that may prevent a good seal. And I just like to do all my jars at one time, just like this. And then I turn it over the other way, and then I dry my rim off. Everybody does it their own way, and this is how I like to do it. I've had no issues. In the year that I've been doing this, all my jars have sealed and stayed sealed. And I'll redo that jar at the end. I'm going to go ahead and just grab another lid, put a seal on, grab the seal and the lid so it don't fall off, set it on top, grab a ring, tighten the ring down until it touches it, then do it just like a normal lid, and then I like to back it off, and then I set it in the canner off to the side. And it's just rinse and repeat for all 20 jars. And a lot of people say there's a learning curve to using these, which everybody that I've watched on YouTube says these are pretty much the same thing as tattlers, because I gotta rinse that seal off. The Harvest Guard company is owned by the same family, supposedly, because they both have the same last names, and the Harvest Guard is ran out of the old Tattler factory, so that's why everybody assumes it's the same company, ran by different sides of the family, I guess. But either way, they are very identical, so the instructions are pretty much the same for all of them. And before I fill in the center of my canner, I will go ahead, I just might as well do it now. I'm going to dump in my vinegar since I've used it. I'll actually go ahead and just show you guys how Harvest Guard recommends to tighten these, but I do it like probably the vast majority of people that use these do. How you're supposed to do it, you're supposed to sit it on like that. You're supposed to put a ring on and hold the lid like this, and then turn the lid, and once the jar starts to turn with the ring, that's tight enough, but I don't really do it that way. That's how Harvest Guard recommends to do it. Try and finagle these in here. My last jar is always kind of difficult. Now, my canner book says it only fits 18, but I can actually get 20 pints in mine. So I just got to arrange the jars in a very specific manner in order to do that. So I got 10 jars on the bottom. I'm going to put my rack in. Just drop that in and start putting my jars in again. And I'm going to go ahead and pull this one back apart. Throw that seal off to the side. I always prepare extras just in case. I'm going to go ahead and put that in there. Make sure this is the right one. It is. That way I can identify this from the others. I'm just going to put a dash right on the side of the lid. And then I will continue to use these as identification lids for recipes that I want to do experiments with. And I'm going to try and get my jars dropped in here. Just like so. And I'm going to go ahead and clean this off here. And I'm going to go ahead and grab one of my older jars to show you what it looks like in the jar. Alright, so this is one of my original batches of this recipe. And you can see there's still about 1.5 inches of liquid on top, about 2 inches maybe. And what I normally do before I dump it out of the can is I kind of give it a shake to dislodge the beans from the bottom. And that typically does it pretty well. And now the beans are nice and loose, and they fall down from the bottom and everything. And I just label this with a Dymo labeler. But since I got the Harvest Guard lids now, I don't need to use those. I got some Avery labels that are removable, and I'm going to use those in place of this. Okay, so my canner is now starting to vent out of the steam vent right there, and you're going to want to do this for 10 minutes to evacuate any and all air that may be in your canner. This has been sitting here boiling like this for, I don't know, about 25 minutes before it even started to have a continuous stream of steam like that. I will go ahead after the 10 minutes and switch this dial to 2, and bring it up to the center mark on that gauge right there for the number 2, which would be 11 pounds. And once it gets up to the 11 pounds, I will go ahead and back my heat off from high. Since I'm using a different burner than what I was previously, my settings is going to have to change, so I'm going to have to finagle it around and everything. But since I don't have a jiggling weight, this right here is going to need to let wisps of steam come out about 2 to 3 times every minute. I will go ahead and just bring you back once I'm getting ready to stop the canning process. Oh, and one more thing. This is going to be processed for 75 minutes. That's my preference. If you want to use the USDA guidelines, that's going to be 90 minutes. But I don't want 90 minutes for my beans because they're going to be going in primarily chili. So they're going to be cooking for an additional hour in the chili. So I don't really want the extra 20 minutes on my processing time. And that's how I actually did my other beans, 75 minutes instead of 90, and those are perfect. They're just right, al dente, or once they're done in chili, they're perfect. And I did get 4 plain jars that I have ready to go in after that gets done. And I'm also going to be making another thing today, which is going to be... Okay, so I'm back, and my Mexican pinto beans just finished about 45 minutes ago, and I went ahead and let them sit in the canner for 45 minutes to depressurize. And I'm going to go ahead and take the lid off now. And you're always going to want to go ahead and open the lid away from you so you don't get hit with steam. And the jar should still be bubbling, or boiling, if you'd want to say that. I'm going to go ahead and start removing my jars. Okay, so you probably can't see, but I got 2 rows of 4 in the very back right there. And that is my first row, plus 1. And I'm going to go ahead and remove my center rack, and I'm just going to use a dish towel to pull that out. And then set this off to the side. I just might set that on the floor for right now. And I'm going to go ahead and continue to remove the first row of jars. And it does appear that I did have some siphoning, so we will see, or I will see later on, if my jars actually seal, and if I have any false seals, which I'm hoping I will not, since I do have about 3/4 of an inch of beans below the 1 inch of headspace. So it looks like I added the right amount of beans per jar. I will go ahead and show everybody right quick how to go ahead and finish these, since these are not your standard steel flats. What you're supposed to do is you're supposed to tighten these down very tight, just until it won't turn anymore. You're really supposed to crank these down, because if you don't do that step, these will not seal right. And it really helps to have something to move the jars and grab onto the jars. This is probably one of the only disadvantages of using the reusable lids, is this extra step when they come right out of the canner. Because of the lid shortage, I don't really have a choice. Luckily, I was able to come across these, and it kind of sounds like one of my jars is venting some pressure, so I'm hoping I'm not going to have an issue. But this is pretty much going to be the end of this video, so I will go ahead and just sum it up here, since I got 1 jar left. And I hope everybody finds this video a little useful. And also, I should go ahead and mention, this jar right here is the jar that I used the Frank's Red Hot, because it has that Sharpie mark, which it did stay throughout the canning process. So I pretty much have all of my jars, and they are all cranked down really tight. I am going to go ahead and put everything back in a nice little neat row, and I'm going to leave these on my counter for about half an hour until my canner cools down, because I am going to process the other jars of beans that I still have from this batch, which I did 5 just regular plain old pinto beans. So, and then I have the other one that was the Frank's Red Hot. I will just go ahead and end this video right here. I hope everybody enjoys, and Don't forget to smash that like, comment, and subscribe button if you have not already smashed that subscribe button. And as always, thank you for watching, and I hope you stick around to continue to watch me on this journey of mine.